Chapter 2. How a firm adds value. There seems to be a deep-rooted tendency in the human mind to seek something that persists through change, hence the search for an underlying identity, a persistent stuff, a substance that is conserved in spite of qualitative changes and in terms of which these changes can be explained. Susan Stebbing. When you make an investment in a firm, you are not buying its past. You are not joining for a ride into the past. That trip has already been run and others have taken that ride. Rather, we look forward by looking for something that persists, an underlying identity. This persistent stuff is how a firm adds value over time in a sustainable way. In financial statement analysis, this is what we are interested in engaging with and understanding. A key first step in understanding this persistent stuff, how a firm adds value, is to understand its strategy. We turn up at Sydney's large, cavernous Central Railway station and go to the country train's ticket counter and ask how much the train tickets are. Well, it depends on where you're going, says the helpful railway staff employee, slightly exasperated. The destination will determine the cost of the ticket. A ticket to Brisbane in Queensland, about 1,000 kilometres north of Sydney, might cost about $150. A ticket to Kiama, 120 kilometres south of Sydney on the south coast of New South Wales, might cost about $15. So how much we pay for a train ticket will depend on where and how far we are going. The trains line up at the country platforms of Central Railway Station in Sydney. The destinations of the various trains are shown on the railway indicator boards. We can have a high level of confidence that the trains will make it to their destinations. The indicator boards usually do not say one destination and the trains go somewhere else. And the trains very rarely crash on the way. Trains are generally reliable in that regard. Not so with businesses. Perceiving and understanding a firm's planned destination, its strategy, is not as easy as looking up at a train indicator board. We need to be able to discern the key aspects of a firm's strategy. Also, getting a train to its planned destination is more reliable than getting a business to where it is planned to be. Implementing a strategy takes real skill from a firm's management and staff and is filled with dangers and risks. Many more businesses than trains fail to reach their destination as planned. The starting point for financial statement analysis is to decide what journeys we might like to go on. What business strategies we wish to back with real capital resources. A business strategy is essentially how a firm has or intends to add value. This involves changing the economic and business realities of a firm in some way to add value. This change in value of the firm could then be expected to be reflected in changes in a firm's financial statements. Another way in which a firm could apparently add value, as measured by its financial statements, is through adopting one type of accounting treatment compared to another, without any change to its underlying economic and business reality. Clearly, a firm does not add value simply by changing its accounting treatments. The other aspect we need to consider before launching into financial statement analysis is to take a step back. We need to have a look at the train indicator board and see if we have any reason to suspect that the indicator board may be defective or inaccurate in some way. Do we have reason to suspect any aspects of a firm's financial statements may not reflect the underlying economic and business realities of the firm? Indeed, can a firm's financial statements be trusted as an aid to helping us understand how a firm adds value? Let us now consider what is a firm's strategy. 2.1. a firm's strategy. One thing is sure, we have to do something. We have to do the best we know how at the moment. If it doesn't turn out right, we can modify it as we go along. Franklin D. Roosevelt. At 104 years of age, Waldo McBurney won the America's Oldest Worker for 2006 award. He was born in 1902 and started working in 1915 at the age of 13 by guiding a team of horses pulling a wheat thresher. Until a relatively short time before his death at age 106, he worked as a beekeeper in Kansas. He wrote his autobiography in 2004, entitled My First 100 Years, a look back from the finish line. In investing, we are not interested in looking back from the finish line. You do not make any money doing that. Indeed, the world is full of people smarter after the event. For example, not many members of the US Congress voted against commencing the Iraqi War in 2003. At that time, the Iraqi War had widespread bipartisan political support in the US. A few years later, when the war had not gone to plan, there were many US politicians ready to criticize the war with suitable moral outrage. It is much easier to look back and be wise after the event. Investing is about being wise before the event. This is not so easy. A key to being wise before the event is to engage with and deeply understand a firm's strategy. A firm's strategy is the direction it is intending to take and how it is planning to get there. We have a firm's glossy annual report in our hands. We start by reading the chairman's report and the managing director's report and other words highlighted in a firm's annual report. These can give us some qualitative clues about a firm's strategy and are often used by firms to flag some key aspects of their strategy and expected prospects. But we largely do not start financial statement analysis with the financial statements. We start financial statement analysis by considering the economics of a firm's business in a general, largely qualitative sense. We need to understand a firm's competitive environment, its industry and the broader economy, and how well positioned it is in this environment. What key risks does it face, and what are the key economic factors driving its profitability? We find these things out largely using sources of information other than a firm's financial statements. In this section, we'll first see that strategy is a concept. It is not something we can pick up and see. We start financial statement analysis with an assessment of a firm's strategy, which is our guide to the future of a firm. We will see that it is this future which a firm is selling to equity investors in our capital markets. We will also see that a firm's strategy will add value to the extent it results in the firm's future earnings being greater than the cost of the capital it is using. Concept of strategy. True, I talk of dreams which are the children of an idle brain, begot of nothing but vain fantasy. William Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. We can view strategy as a concept, something that no one has ever seen. It is essentially our view of the intentions or patterns of previous actions of a firm. We saw in Chapter 1 that we seek to form our view of the value of a firm rather than seek to discover the one true intrinsic value. It is the same with understanding a firm's strategy. At heart, it will be our view of a firm's strategy. I like Professor Rummelt's definition of strategy. Strategy is creating situations for economic rents and finding ways to sustain them. This connects nicely with the economic profit framework for financial statement analysis. Ryman Healthcare's strategy could be focused on generating a strong return on its net operating assets, most importantly on its retirement villages. It is able to do this because of strong customer demand, which is driven by positive long-term demographic trends. An increasing proportion of the population is over 75 years. Increasing social acceptance of living in integrated retirement villages, resulting in an increasing proportion of the population that is over 75 years wanting to live in retirement villages, and growing residential property values, providing customers with the ability to pay for retirement village units. Further, Ryman Healthcare has adopted a business model where it funds a substantial part of its operations by way of interest-free loans from its customers. We call this operating liability leverage, to distinguish it from leverage that comes from introducing debt into a business. This helps Ryman Healthcare hold a substantial land bank of sites for the development of future retirement villages, and partly offsets its low level of asset turnover, that is, low level of sales compared to the net operating assets employed in the firm. In this way, Ryman Healthcare has been able, and expects to continue in the future, to deliver returns to equity investors greater than its cost of capital. Another definition of strategy I like is, in French, une rêve ou un bouquet de rêves en quête de réalité. For those who prefer English, this can be translated as strategies are dreams in search of reality. This can give the sense of strategy as causing our dreams, which flower in our minds, to move beyond just our minds and to impact on the real world and affect other people's lives. Seeing our dreams gradually turn into reality is an amazing thing. Reality will always be messy, compromised, and imperfect, whereas our dreams will tend to lack some degree of realism and omit a lot of the inconvenient details and unpleasantness that make up our real world. Nevertheless, our dreams contain certain essences, values, feelings, and ideas of what is important to us as people. Seeing our dreams emerge into the light of day and become real is great, and it usually comes only after a lot of hard work, straining, and searching. In life, it is often not possible to make changes in our world that will have an impact today. We often cannot suddenly change our career one day. There may be a small issue of retraining and also of convincing others and ourselves about our capacities in this new, untried career for us. Or alleviate suffering in Africa due to the ravages of AIDS. Cures and treatments take time to develop, which then take further time and resources to make available to those suffering from AIDS in Africa. Or create a top 10 listed New Zealand company specialising in the retirement aged care industry. This took Ryman Healthcare well over 20 years to achieve. But there is one thing we can do today, and that is dream about doing it and what it might take to turn those dreams into reality. It is possible for us to have a lot of tremendous dreams and ideas, and yet have no commitment to seek to turn them into reality. This is not what strategy is about. Strategy is about having dreams, but also straining for ways to turn them into reality. Indeed, the strength of strategy is this. Although there can often not be a lot we can do to change things in any major way today, by doing something today, there is often a lot we can do today and tomorrow and the next day that can make significant changes in a few years, if we have the focus and direction that a strategy can give us. We can start to retrain today with a view to changing our careers in the future. We can save and invest today with a view to achieving a degree of financial independence in the future. We can care for young children today with a view to seeing them grow to full adulthood in the future, and so on. These strategies start with dreams. Strategies can be essentially the process to turn dreams into reality in the future. If nothing else, strategies require us to value the future and not just the present moment. The dreams and strategies in the 1980s of Ryman Healthcare's founders, John Ryder and Kevin Hickman, are now greatly influencing the lives of thousands of residents in Ryman Healthcare's retirement villages and rest homes in New Zealand and Australia, as well as the lives of their relatives. It is also adding value to its equity investors, which includes my wife and children, as well as the investment arm of Ngāi Tahu, one of the major Māori iwi or tribes, and many other investors, and to a range of other stakeholders. To engage with a firm's future, we need to engage with its strategy, which is what a business is selling to its equity investors. Selling their futures. Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future. John F. Kennedy. Financial statement analysis focuses on understanding how to translate qualitative factors, such as a firm's strategy, into quantitative measures of value, to know what adds value. How to assess a firm's strategy is critical to financial statement analysis. However, how to develop winning strategies for firms is largely outside the scope of our unit. It is covered in various books and units on strategy, which you can explore on your own. Although how to assess a firm's strategy is a key foundational skill in financial statement analysis, it will not be our focus. I will simply introduce some of the issues for us to think about. However, growing in our understanding of how to assess firm strategies will greatly assist the quality of our financial statement analysis. Fundamentally, a firm's strategy is the trip we are buying into as an equity investor. It is the trip we are deciding whether to go on. There are only so many trips our limited capital can take. Indeed, each dollar of our capital can only go on one trip at a time. As the person selling train tickets at Central Railway Station in Sydney will tell us, how much we pay to go on a trip will depend on where and how far we are going, or in the case of businesses, where and how far we think we may be going. And a firm's strategy will only add value to equity investors to the extent it is able to use the capital it has from investors to earn a return greater than the cost of that capital. Exceeding the cost of capital. The capital markets ration scarce capital to unlimited potential uses by way of a clearing price, which is the firm's cost of capital. It is set by participants in the capital markets. It is not a price paid for something in the present. The market for fish sold in the Sydney Fish Market in Blackwattle Bay on the foreshore of Sydney Harbour is based on the price paid today for fish supplied today. Typically, over 100 species of fish are sold in the Sydney Fish Market each day, fresh to consumers who consume them quickly. In capital markets, equity interests in businesses are the fish. This is the commodity being sold. But the price at which it is sold is based on an expectation of getting our capital back plus a return in the future. In this way, businesses are selling their futures to potential equity investors. There is one thing we know about the future, and that is that it is uncertain. Yet some potential futures seem more likely to us than others. The likelihood of my winning the 14-kilometre City to Surf fun run between Sydney's CBD and Bondi Beach, in which over 80,000 people run, is slight. The likelihood I'll be able to catch the bus from Yeppoon to CQ University in Rockhampton is quite high. It is the same with business. In capital markets, businesses are selling their futures. These futures rest on their strategies, how they intend to use the resources they have to produce outcomes in their competitive environments. Participants in capital markets ask themselves how likely it is that a firm will be able to deliver the returns it expects to achieve. The cost of equity capital for a firm, its required rate of return, will be set by participants in the capital markets after a consideration of the risks or uncertainty surrounding a firm's expected future returns compared to all the other investment opportunities or trips their capital could go on. A firm adds value by generating returns to shareholders greater than the return required by the capital markets, given an assessment by those markets of the risks the business is taking to generate those expected returns. Remember that capital markets, unlike for example the Sydney fish market, rely on expectations. One market sells fish each day, the other sells the futures of businesses with all the uncertainties the future holds for us all. We have considered strategy as a concept, creating situations for economic rents and finding ways to sustain them, or dreams straining to influence reality. We also saw that by understanding a firm's strategy, we start engaging with a firm's future. We considered how firms are selling their futures in the world's capital markets. In that sense, capital markets are markets in dreams, and that our focus in assessing a firm's strategy will be the extent to which it enables a firm to add value by earning a return greater than its cost of capital. We will now consider some of the issues we need to think about when seeking to assess a firm's strategy. 2.2. Assessing strategies. All strategies are abstractions which exist only in the minds of interested parties. It is important to remember that no one has ever seen a strategy or tackled one. Every strategy is an invention, a figment of someone's imagination, whether conceived of as intentions before actions take place, or inferred as patterns to describe actions that have already occurred. Henry Mintzberg. In financial statement analysis, we need to adopt a strategic perspective. We need to think strategically about the firm we wish to analyse. We are looking for the persistent stuff of a business, how it adds value and is expected to add value in the future. We are also looking to engage meaningfully with a firm's economic and business realities today and to understand how they are likely to change in the future. Engaging with and assessing a firm's strategy is the key to doing this. To be good at financial statement analysis, we need to develop our capacity for strategic insight, to be able to focus on the few things that really matter in a business. We need to do this in a careful and logical way. We need to be sensitive to the key strategic issues facing the firm we are analysing and to be able to assess the skill and adeptness of the firm's management team to address and meet these challenges. In this section, we will consider ideas about how to assess something we can never see, a firm's strategy. Never seen a strategy. Focus is a key to success in life. I attended the final of the 4,000 metres men's team pursuit in cycling at the Sydney Olympics in 2000. Sitting in the Dunk Grey Velodrome in suburban Bankstown in Sydney, we had front row seats. The German team won the gold medal that year and set a new world record for the event. This group of 4 men had become extremely good at cycling in a circular 250 metre track very, very fast. Their cycles were heavily tailored to the task at hand. For example, they had no brakes. Because of this focus, dedication, persistence, and talent, they were able to do a very specific task better than anyone else in the world at that time. As with life, so in business. Successful companies will carefully focus their efforts within their competitive environment. Successful companies will be straining to achieve something that is not easy. They will be seeking to genuinely add value to real, specific, targeted customers in ways that are consistently better than the competition. A key judgment to make about a firm's strategy is to understand why different firms facing the same environment perform differently. 5 P's for strategy. A desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world. John le Carre. Henry Mintzberg, Bruce Ahlstrand and Joseph Lampel have written a classic book on strategy called Strategy Safari, a guided tour through the wilds of strategic management. In their book, they outline the 5 P's for strategy and discuss 10 schools of strategy formation. They also give a sense of the diversity that is possible in thinking about strategy. A discussion of the 10 schools of strategy formation in Strategy Safari is included as Appendix 1. We will now discuss the 5 P's for strategy. The first point to make is that the word strategy does not contain the letter P at all, let alone 5 P's. But alliteration, using the same first letter or sound in a series of words, can help us to remember a few points. Mintzberg suggests strategy can be viewed as a plan, ploy, pattern, position, or perspective. Let us look at each P in turn. Plan. A strategy can be some sort of consciously intended course of action, how a firm intends to address the markets, environment, and challenges it faces. Ryman Healthcare's strategy is to use its in-house team to identify sites to purchase land and to design, construct, operate and own integrated retirement villages. These retirement villages are to provide a full spectrum of services from independent townhouse living to hospital level care, typically attracting retired residents from existing communities within about a 10-kilometre radius of each retirement village. Ryman Healthcare will not acquire existing retirement villages or rest homes, nor will it develop standalone lifestyle villages. It also does not plan to grow by acquiring other participants in the retirement sector, as this sector continues to consolidate. Ryman Healthcare does not plan to diversify further geographically and plans to focus its growth in its existing markets of New Zealand and Australia. Ploy. A strategy can be a ploy simply designed to outmaneuver or outsmart a competitor. It is heavily influenced by predicting the potential actions of competitors, second-guessing them, and seeking to influence their actions. Ryman Healthcare has a strategy of actively acquiring a substantial land bank of suitable sites for the development of new integrated retirement villages. It currently has a land bank that should support about 3 to 4 years of future construction of new retirement villages. Besides providing some security for its future development plans, Ryman Healthcare's strategy of acquiring a substantial land bank also makes these potential sites unavailable for development by competitors. Ryman Healthcare has identified the key strategic importance of controlling suitable sites. It is difficult to acquire suitable sites for large-scale retirement villages in urban areas close to existing communities of its target market. Acquiring these sites well in advance not only secures its own development plans, but also, and equally importantly, makes it more difficult for competitors to develop new retirement villages in these communities. Pattern. A strategy can also be a consistency in a firm's behaviour, how a firm typically operates, which may emerge over time rather than result from a premeditated, deliberate plan. When Ryman Healthcare commenced its activities in 1984, it conducted all its activities in-house, including property development, construction, and the marketing and management of retirement villages and rest homes. As Ryman Healthcare grew, it further developed its in-house capacities in each aspect of its operations to accommodate this growth. Ryman Healthcare has been consistent in its behaviour of keeping virtually all its activities in-house. It is not clear to me that this was a premeditated plan from the outset by its founders, John Ryder and Kevin Hickman. It may have been. However, it is also possible that when Ryman Healthcare was a small business starting out, its original founders controlled in-house all its activities, as many founders of small companies do as they seek to get established. As Ryman Healthcare developed, it is possible that certain consistencies or patterns in behaviours emerged in the firm, including developing a strong in-house focus on caring for individuals in retirement villages and rest homes, as well as the ability to develop and construct quality new retirement villages and rest homes on a large scale. This pattern of behaviour may have developed into a strategy of seeking to preserve key capacities in-house as its operations continued to significantly expand. A successful pattern may have developed into a strategy. Position. A strategy can be how a firm positions itself in its environment, or in other words, how it matches its activities to its environment. A strategy can be how a firm focuses its activities in a niche or place in its environment to generate abnormal returns. For example, key aspects of Ryman Healthcare's environment are demand in the retirement village and aged care industry is growing strongly in New Zealand and Australia, as it is in several countries. There is an increasing proportion of the total population in New Zealand and Australia in the over 75-year age group, and they are enjoying longer life expectancies. Also, New Zealand and Australia has a lower proportion of people over 75 years of age living in retirement villages compared to other countries such as the UK and US. And there is the potential for this proportion to grow further in the future. There is currently an excess of demand over supply for units in integrated retirement villages. The retirement village and aged care industries in both New Zealand and Australia are largely fragmented among many owners, with the 5 largest operators accounting for about 1/2 of each market. Ryman Healthcare is the largest operator in New Zealand, with about 19% of retirement village units and about 9% of rest home beds. Its market share in Australia is quite small. The industry is undergoing some consolidation. The government has a significant interest in the retirement village and aged care industry. The government provides substantial subsidies to people in rest homes and care subsidies for people in family homes. The government has been increasing the level of regulation of retirement villages in both New Zealand and Australia, increasing compliance costs and standards in the industry. In Australia, the Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety has led to increased regulation in Australia. There are limited barriers to entry into the retirement village market, particularly the development of townhouses and apartments for independent retirement living. The main barrier to entry is the ability to acquire suitable sites. There are more significant barriers to entry in the aged care industry for semi-dependent or dependent residents. Access to the subsidised funding from the government for rest home and hospital care is limited and more likely to be allocated to existing operators with proven track records than to new entrants. Regulatory controls in this segment are also significant. The industry enjoys favourable taxation treatment, as income from retirement village unit sales and resales of occupation rights, deemed to be loans, are not taxable. Ryman Healthcare has positioned itself within this environment by focusing on growing organically, that is, through expanding and developing the scale of its existing operations. rather than through the acquisition of competitors. It is not participating in consolidation of the industry. It is focusing on growing its existing operations strongly and preserving and developing its existing operational capacities in terms of development and construction of new retirement villages and rest homes and the care and support it provides its residents. Acquiring a substantial land bank of suitable sites to take advantage of the expected continued strong market demand for units in integrated retirement villages, and to ensure these sites are unavailable for redevelopment by its competitors. Active lobbying and engaging with government, along with other industry participants, in relation to issues relevant to the industry. Perspective. A strategy can also be something inside the heads of key individuals in a firm, a definite ingrained way of perceiving the world. What is the character or personality of Ryman Healthcare? How do its key players and its staff more generally view their world? Ryman Healthcare has many caring, conscientious staff working in its retirement villages and rest homes. There does appear to be a view of genuinely caring for the needs of the elderly and to support them as they age further. However, Ryman Healthcare is growing rapidly and has grown to 41 retirement villages, with an additional 16 in the pipeline at various stages of development, comprising about 8,000 retirement village units as well as about 4,000 care beds. Is the perspective of key players in Ryman Healthcare changing as the firm grows and becomes more successful? Is it losing focus on caring for the elderly in its retirement villages as it becomes one of New Zealand's top listed companies, and as some of its senior staff become wealthier through the firm's employee share scheme? Ryman Healthcare may be able to preserve the strengths in its culture and in the perspectives of senior management and staff, but there are ongoing risks as Ryman Healthcare continues to grow rapidly. Finally, here are some key factors to consider when assessing a firm's strategy. The firm's competitive environment. What is the nature of the industry in which the firm competes? What competition does the firm face from existing competitors? What threats does it face from the potential entry of new competitors or from the introduction of substitute products? Who are the channel captains in the value chain, and what is the relative bargaining power of the firm compared with its suppliers and customers? How well positioned is the firm within its competitive environment? We need to identify the firm's core competencies and the sustainability of its competitive advantage. We need to assess the firm's ability to effectively implement and sustain its strategy in the future. This has been an introductory look at strategy. It is designed to stimulate your interest, to develop your ability to discern and connect with your firm's strategy. Financial statement analysis can give us the skills to translate a firm's strategy, expressed in qualitative terms, into a dollar value, expressed in quantitative terms. The future earnings of our firm will depend on the quality of its strategy and how well it is implemented. We engage with and seek to understand our firm's strategy to ensure our subsequent analysis of the financial statements is realistic. Given we will be using returns and earnings from the financial statements in our analysis, we also need to be sensitive to how well the financial statements may be capturing the economic and business realities of the firm. We need to ask ourselves whether there are any aspects to the way the accounts are put together that may be disconnecting us from, rather than connecting us to, this reality. For this reason, we need to consider the accounting treatments our firm is using.